This video is brought to you by Raycon.
Where have you taken me?
To the edge of the universe. Glad we could find parking. This is the only rift that survived the Great Mending. Boy, I bet some viewers are so lost right now. It's their fault for not keeping up with the lore. Now I will send you through the rift and take your place as Arlo Prime. Oh, jeez, is that a thing now? I mean, oh no! Spirit of Raycon, if you can hear me, I need help. What's happening?
What are they? The Raycon gaming earbuds.
I'm receiving divine knowledge. The gaming earbuds offer even fuller sound and even meatier bass with 3 distinct sound profiles to choose from. Even better, with HyperSync enabled, audio latency is drastically reduced, which makes them great for gaming. They look incredibly slick and come in multiple colors, each slicker than the last.
Where can a mere mortal acquire such a wonder?
All one must do is go to buyraycon.com/Arlo to get 15% off their purchase, plus $20 off Raycon's gaming earbuds and $10 off their gaming headphones. And every order comes with a 100% satisfaction guarantee.
They're beautiful. I can't do it. I can't throw you through the rift and replace you.
You promise?
I promise.
Yay! And can we get ice cream?
Yes, we can get ice cream.
Yay!
Yay!
Stickler. Hello, my friends. It's time for another batch of 5 mini eShop reviews. You know, that cool video format I could probably do like regularly, but for some reason I only do once every year or two? Yeah, that one. The eShop, as we all know, is positively stuffed to the gills with games. But who has time to play them all? Are there any good ones you might have missed? And most importantly, what does Arlo think about 5 of them specifically? Well, at the very least, I can help you with that last question. Here are my opinions on 5 games that can be purchased from the Nintendo eShop and played on the Nintendo Switch family of systems. Whoosherino! Defunct is a really surprising game. It's a very short game, maybe 1 or 2 hours, depending on how many optional collectibles you want to go after, and it was made by a small studio. Yet it manages to deliver a unique experience on a large, sweeping scale. The basic idea is that you play as a broken robot that falls off its ship down to the abandoned post-apocalyptic landscape below. You've got to catch up with your ship before it leaves the planet. Thing is, you can't really accelerate, but you can use your gravitize ability to gain speed when going downhill. There are some other mechanics too, like magnetize, which lets you stick to walls and go around corkscrews and such, but that one's a little more fiddly. Really, gravitize is the heart of the game. Its main hook, and it's a terrific hook. Hitting that button and picking up speed is immediately fun, and learning how to time your presses just as you're cresting each little hill and building up a ton of speed as a result is positively exhilarating. The world is a series of courses all strung together to create a very nice, very natural story with some fun little twists and turns. The visuals are fairly basic on a technical level, yet the world is still very evocative, with a huge amount of old tech and ruined structures to see and ride around on. It already feels incredible speeding around, but the phenomenal soundtrack combined with the epic landscape and the natural motivation to catch up with your ship manages to instill a real sense of wonder and excitement. The game does have a few problems. Performance on Switch isn't as good as I would like, with some unfortunate choppiness here and there, and the weakest parts of the experience are when you're forced to slow down and explore bigger areas. The game excels in speed and constant movement, so awkwardly lining up and failing jumps multiple times and contending with some janky physics can really take the wind out of your sails. Overall though, Defunct is a really pleasant and refreshing game. It may be short, but it's such a breezy ride that you might find yourself starting up a new playthrough the moment your first one ends. Pikuniku is one of those games that clicked with me immediately. Even just in the opening moments, when exploring the moveset, I knew I was in for a treat. The floaty, tumbly physics, the morph ball-esque roll, the little kick move. gosh, honestly, I think a good 60% of it was just that kick. The visuals are simple, but also very effective. The clean style and cute character designs are just so inviting. It's hard to classify Pikuniku as belonging to any one genre, as it's got elements from a good handful of them. You've got platforming, you've got puzzles, you've got stealth, you've got a couple things that make it very slightly Metroidvania-ish. Really, it's just kind of a general, lighthearted, fairly casual platforming adventure game, I guess. The world is fun to explore, especially with the aforementioned controls, and there are lots of little mini-games to play and interactions to find and stuff to collect. But I would say the game's strongest element is its humor. The denizens of this land take many forms, including animals and inanimate objects, which I always love, and they're all extremely silly. The absurd dialogue never stops or falters, and from start to finish, it managed to elicit a steady stream of chuckles from this here monster. Some of these sequences are very funny. Pikuniku is pretty short, though it feels like it does enough with its concept to justify the experience. My main problem is with the way it's structured. In the first half of the game, you're given a few open areas to explore, and wandering around talking to people and solving problems was the most fun I had with it. But then the story develops into something more substantial, and from there you're launched into a series of very linear missions until it all resolves at the end. Normally, I do like a good story, but something about this one kinda pulled me out of the lighthearted fun a little, and I found myself wishing I were out exploring more. I guess it feels like the game develops a theme, and when you're wondering what other towns and places you might travel to during the rest of the game, the towns end. Even if that structure doesn't quite mesh with me though, overall, Pikuniku is a highly enjoyable experience. It's silly and simple while still providing just enough variety and mechanical depth to keep you engaged. And considering the fun style and funny characters, picking this one up is a no-brainer. Forma VIII is the kind of game I would love to make. It's a moody, atmospheric sci-fi Metroidvania that was clearly done on a budget, but still provides a big world to explore and looks and feels very much like a game worth playing. On paper, it's the kind of project that motivates me as an aspiring game designer, that makes me dream about making my own game of a similar type. That's why I'm particularly sad to say that I didn't like Forma VIII nearly as much as I hoped I would. The game has you playing as a little floaty ball, exploring a strange alien place. The story is very minimal and vague, and honestly, I can't even remember what the ultimate goal is supposed to be, if there even is one, but that's okay because the overall atmosphere is pretty good. The music is quiet and moody, the art style uses lots of black and solid colors without any texturing. It's that kind of limbo-ish indie game, minimalist kind of thing that should probably just have a name by now because it's so common, but I don't think it does. None of the art really blows me away, but there's some decently cool areas and set pieces. It all does what it's supposed to do. In terms of exploration, it's your standard Metroidvania with new abilities to earn so you can unlock parts of the world bit by bit. Individual areas will often feature mechanical through lines that are quite clever. All fine so far, but when you start getting into the movement mechanics and combat though, that's when you lose me. Your primary weapon is a little bomb. You can drop this next to an enemy, drop it in the air, and hope the enemy runs into it at the exact right moment, or use your pulse ability to propel it. This is a very clever idea. I love games where your different abilities work together, but in this case, it makes the combat very sluggish and awkward. It's really difficult to aim your bomb at a moving enemy, and the very nature of dropping bombs and trying to shoot them around just gets tiresome. Some trickier battles are long and frustrating affairs. It's just not a fun mechanic to have to engage with that frequently. Making matters worse, your character is slow. Later in the game, you get a little boost that kinda helps things, but for the most part, it's like moving through molasses. It's another thing that's not necessarily bad on paper. You know, I can handle a slower, more thoughtful pace sometimes, but in a game that's all about exploration and even occasional backtracking, it gets old. And the world's populated by a lot of enemies, which of course are often hard to avoid thanks to the slow movement speed and annoying to engage with thanks to the awkward bomb mechanic. None of it is bad at the start, but as the game moves along, it just starts to drag. Even just getting from place to place starts to feel like a chore. It would be better with a good fast travel system, but the one that's in place is confusing and often just doesn't take me where I feel like it's supposed to. I actually made it pretty far into the game, but then I hit a part where you have to slowly push these big rocks around, and every few seconds they send out a pulse that hurts you if you're too close, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I really hate to quit a game after making it that far, but I didn't feel the motivation to continue. From what I can tell, plenty of people enjoyed Forma VIII. The world is good, it shows off some good puzzles, and even some excellently designed sequences, and it offers a lot of bang for your buck when you can get it on sale, but unfortunately, it turns out it's just not for me. It is rare for a game to truly wow me. Even rarer for a puzzle game to wow me, of all things. But Goragoa. My gosh, Goragoa. How do you even describe a game like this? The whole thing is essentially a series of images presented in 4 panels. You can zoom in and out of these images, and they can animate and transition, and you can even line them up with each other to solve puzzles. That's the basic idea, but what Jason Roberts, the sole developer of the game, accomplishes with it is nothing short of magic. The way these images interact, the way they open up, the ways they mess with your perception, it's staggering. There isn't even much more I can say about it, and in fact, I recommend watching a couple moments of this gameplay to see if it's your kind of thing, then either shutting your eyes or turning this off and going straight to the eShop. Like, I get that game design can be a very complicated thing. Some projects are massive and take lots and lots of people to pull together, but I can usually still sort of see how they're structured and how they were designed. I have literally no idea how you plan out a game like this. I don't understand how you design these puzzles or how you keep track of every image and where each one leads. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get to ask Jason someday, but right now all I can do is marvel at the game he created. I love to identify games that I feel are truly unique within the medium, and also accomplish something wholly artistic that other mediums couldn't possibly pull off. Suffice it to say, this is one of those games. Conceptually, it's an absolute masterwork, and I know I'm drifting dangerously close to wannabe artsy-fartsy video game pundit territory when I say this, but I'm saying it anyway. I think Goragoa belongs in a museum. It's a wondrous example of what video games are capable of. I'm a big fan of Metroidvanias, and Ori and the Blind Forest is a very popular Metroidvania, so naturally I've had my eye on it for a long time. I finally got around to playing it, and I must say, it's good, but I did come away slightly disappointed. First and foremost, did you see them graphics? Ori is an obscenely beautiful game. One of those games where what could have been a budget experience was clearly given the full AAA treatment when it came to visuals. Absolutely no expense was spared, no level of polish was too great, and the end result is a game of rare quality. From the environments to the creature designs to the character animations. The gameplay is also incredibly polished. The movement is so zippy and fluid and allows for some really excellent precision platforming. As with any good Metroidvania, you unlock abilities which allow you to reach new areas of the map, and there's even a skill tree, so there's a very strong sense of progression from the beginning of the game to the end. The combat is actually really unique. All you do is mash the attack button and your shots home in on nearby enemies. This allows you to focus entirely on avoiding their attacks rather than aiming your own, which is an interesting dynamic I haven't seen much. So the visuals in the gameplay are great, but unfortunately there are a few areas where Ori just didn't mesh with me the way I was hoping. First, there's the combat. It is unique and fun, but the homing system led the developers to make the enemies incredibly aggressive. That's the whole idea. Now that you're focusing just on avoiding attacks, the attacks have to be constant, right? Well, it starts to wear on me after a while. I just want to move through old places, but even common enemies will kill you dead if you're not super careful. It's exhausting. Then the game uses a pretty novel system where you can spend energy to create your own checkpoints. It's a fun idea, but I usually just end up forgetting to place one and being frustrated with myself when I die. Another good on paper idea, but it's just not very fun to have to constantly manage these things. Another big problem is with one of the game's main mechanics. You can boost off of enemies and projectiles, and even chain these boosts together, allowing you to fly all over the place and shoot stuff around to aid in both puzzles and combat. It's yet another concept that's really, really good on its own, and it's a really important part of the game's identity, but it became a little too much for me by the end of the game. It started to feel like that was the whole game, in fact. Tricky platforming is fine, but chaining all these boosts together with zero margin of error again and again and again everywhere you go, I just get tired of it. Then one big draw of Metroidvanias, naturally, is the backtracking to collect stuff. But the hyper-aggressive enemies and over-reliance on boosting make it feel like more of a hassle than it's worth. And then, I know I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but the story doesn't do it for me. I don't know exactly what it is. I want to get into it with all the emotional stuff, but I can't. Something about the story, it's just too vague and generic for me. It all kind of falls flat, and maybe even feels a little too sappy. Oh, I'm sorry. And finally, I've got some issues with the pacing. At the end of each major section is a restart on death escape sequence. And these are a pain in the tuchus. Yeah, the kind of thing where a super exciting sequence stops being exciting after the 50th try. You know, you just want to move on. Then the ending just sort of happens when you're not expecting it, and the game is suddenly done. Overall, Ori and the Blind Forest is clearly a very, very well-made game, and most people seem to adore it. I did enjoy my time with it, but it's one of those games where a lot of little stuff just doesn't quite match my own tastes. It's disappointing, but it happens. I'm still definitely gonna play the sequel sometime, though.
The opinions have been given. The games have been talked about. Now it's your turn to let us all know what you think about these games. And or to let us all know what eShop games you're currently into. And or to write a limerick about a dog named Zeke. Clean! Clean limerick! Clean! PG!